Ladies and gentlemen, hit subscribe to this channel right now. This month, the Supreme Court is going to rule and decide on the immunity decision, presidential immunity, a constitutional victory for Trump. Could happen tomorrow, could happen next week, this entire month. And hit subscribe to this channel. You will hear legal scholars. You're going to hear President Trump in a couple of seconds, within the context that needs to be heard, in his Nevada speech that Democrats and media have distorted. They have lied to you about what he said. He did not say, I don't care about my voters. That's complete nonsense, as always. They're always lying about Trump. Hit subscribe. You'll hear him in a second. But every single day is a Supreme Court, a countdown to the Supreme Court deciding in favor of Donald Trump. I told you there would be a 9-0 unanimous decision overturning the Colorado ban. It was a 9-0 unanimous decision. Even liberal justices sided with President Trump. I have been telling you that Trump is going to get an immunity victory over the special counsel. That could happen tomorrow. I'm doing these segments because every single day is a countdown to a Supreme Court victory regarding constitutional presidential immunity, which will dissolve the special counsel after it'll push the indictment past November, or the trial past November 5th. When Trump wins, he'll dissolve an unconstitutional special counsel. Fox News Justice Thomas raised crucial questions about legitimacy of special counsel's prosecution of Trump. Justice Clarence Thomas has already stated it's likely unconstitutional, the manner in which the special counsel was created. The Mueller probe found categorically nothing. What they stated about Trump was a patent lie from the very beginning, and they believe in fantasies, Democrats. So he was never a Kremlin operative. He was never quoted accurately in the past 6, 7, 8 years. He hasn't been quoted even remotely accurately by Democrats, and they have distorted every single thing he's ever said. But hit subscribe. You're going to hear him in a second. We're going to get to Justice Thomas. And the reason I do these segments every single day is because this entire month is a countdown to victory regarding a Supreme Court victory with immunity, presidential immunity, and also overturning the unconstitutional conviction of Trump. A completely unconstitutional conviction that doesn't have a federal statute. There's literally no federal statute that Trump broke. And that's not hyperbole. The New York State Court did not give a federal statute. You're going to hear John Yoo. You're going to hear John Yoo explain that. Let's listen to Trump. God bless you all, everyone watching. Listen to this, ladies and gentlemen, and you let me know just how much they distorted his words. He was talking about how hot it was. It was close to 100 degrees in Nevada, in Las Vegas. And so, I believe it was Vegas. And it was 100 degrees. It was hot. People were sweating and it was hot, and he was joking. He said, look at the breeze. And he was alluding to not wanting anyone to leave when he said, I don't care about you, I just want your vote. And everyone laughed. You could hear laughter in the audience. The same laughter that keeps Democrats awake at night. The laughter of conservatives who understand Trump in a manner that the morally superior, highly educated despots and totalitarians and authoritarians who impeached Trump over a phone call, now they want to serve, years and years in prison for record-keeping violations when they have laptops that 50 intel officials lie through their teeth to defend, full of bribery and graft schemes, top-secret intelligence on servers, which is impossible from a cybersecurity perspective to transfer, and highly illegal. Foundations that are, again, graft, bribery, pay-to-play schemes all over the place. Democrats don't have, most Democrats, maybe Bloomberg, but most Democrats aren't millionaires or billionaires. They make their money through politics. Trump doesn't need politics to make money. But hit subscribe to this channel. Listen to Trump right now. And you could give this to anyone who thinks that Trump told people he doesn't care about their vote and actually meant it in that manner. It was a complete joke. People laughed. You can hear people laughing in the background.
We catch, they call it quick trial. They have a trial, and it's quick. And by the way, isn't that breeze nice? Do you feel the breeze? Because I don't want anybody going on me. We need every voter. I don't care about you. I just want your vote. I don't care. See, now the press will take that, and they'll say, he said a horrible thing. They'll say, he said, you know what they did? I was just doing a little imitation of this horrible, horrible, worst president in the history of our country. So I imitated him a couple of times getting off the stage because he's...
Do you see how, and they have to do this before we get to Justice Thomas, before we get to the Supreme Court. Do you see how they lie, ladies and gentlemen? Do you see, ladies and gentlemen, how they lie? And you know what? That's one of the reasons you should hit subscribe to this channel. I'm just, I'm going to debunk. You know how when Democrats say they debunk Trump and they never do? They really never do. They speak to somebody and then that person has a difference of opinion, so then Trump's been debunked. None of the articles 4 years ago debunked his major claims. Nobody testified under oath. The Mueller probe, people testified under oath. They found no evidence that Trump was ever a Kremlin operative, yet they still believe that. So they believe in fantasies and hoaxes. That's the only thing. And then the Atlantic article that accuses Trump of saying something he never said, it's really unbelievable how they lie through their teeth. But they attribute quotes to Trump that he literally never stated. And by the way, he's the only president not to have started in recent memory a new war. And to combat that reality that makes them look bad because foreign policy is an unmitigated catastrophe with Democrats, to combat that reality, the Atlantic and others completely fabricate quotes, completely made up and fabricated, not one shred of evidence other than we spoke to people who said that Trump called fallen Americans losers. Nothing could be further from the truth. We know this because there's no evidence. Democrats are these wonderful humanists who are many times atheists. They love and live for evidence. Yet they'll read an article about gossip and hearsay and they'll say, well, Trump said it. Or they'll say an intelligence agency doesn't like Trump and accuse them of something, so he must have done it. But listen to this again. This is so important, ladies and gentlemen. This is the latest hoax. We can debunk hoaxes all the time on this channel. Hit subscribe if you're new. And God bless you all for watching.
We catch, they call it quick trial. They have a trial, and it's quick. And by the way, isn't that breeze nice? Do you feel the breeze?
We'll break it down slowly for the morally superior who love to lie to their base in the electorate. Okay, the wonderful morally superior liberal Democrats routinely lie to other Democrats. Okay, just to get people angry at Trump because they don't have anything good to say about Biden's economy or foreign policy. So their lives revolve around anger at Trump. Okay, so he just stated right now that it's hot. Okay, I'm trying to decode or decipher Trump or translate Trump so the morally superior liberal Democrats who hyperventilated everything they think he says will understand. Okay, we can listen to this again. He was talking about substance issues in China and how they deal with those who sell these substances. Okay, I'm trying to be algorithmically friendly. It's through capital punishment. Okay, so then he said, oh, and by the way, it's hot outside, but look at that breeze. He was alluding to it being warm, 100 degrees or so in Nevada. Oh, but there's a breeze. And the theme of what he was saying, or the he was alluding to people wanting to leave naturally because it's hot. And he was saying, don't leave. And he made a joke saying, oh, you know what? Don't leave. I know it's hot. I don't care about your vote. But I don't care about you. I just want your vote. Meaning, even if we're all suffering in the Nevada heat right now, but we have to make sure Biden is a one-term president. Make sure Democrats don't continue to destroy the country. Whatever. You could fill in the blank there. He was trying to say, oh, it's hot, don't leave. It's a joke. Something the Democrats have also ruined, comedy. So you can't really get that if you slice and dice only that quote. And there's like 1 million views on one channel just devoted to that quote. But if you listen, it's, oh, it's hot, don't leave. I am joking now. I don't care about you. You can still stay in the heat with me. I care about your vote. And then he says, oh, and the media will take that out of context. And of course they did. Then he continues to mock Biden, which is like a theme with Democrats, or a tactic, a strategy. When they know Trump is right about Biden, they then distort his words to make it to make that part of his speech obsolete. Him actually pretending that he's this completely cognitively impaired elderly person, which is our commander-in-chief. So that's another thing. You can hear the whole thing now, and I've tried to explain to the morally superior, highly educated liberal Democrats exactly what took place. Now, this is the entire context. Everything you heard today, if you happen to hear about Trump not caring about his voters, the biggest people the most conniving, the most deceitful, the most disingenuous politicians are the Democrats who talk about Medicare for all and single payer and Green New Deal and all of these things and the working class and inflation. Interest rates are up. And they have a problem, by the way, understanding why inflation and interest rates are bad. They have a big problem. But anyway, we can go on. We're on the brink of a terrible stock market crash because of Biden's energy policies and because Democrats and bureaucrats shut down the our economic system 4 years ago, which we haven't really experienced repercussions of yet. But hit subscribe. Last time I'll play it again, and you can hear the whole thing and see for yourself how desperate they are to lie and deceive about Trump's words.
They call it quick trial. They have a trial, and it's quick. And by the way, isn't that breeze nice? Do you feel the breeze? Because I don't want anybody going on me. We need every voter. I don't care about you. I just want your vote. I don't care. See, now the press will take that, and they'll say, he said a horrible thing. They'll say, you know what they did? I was just doing a little imitation of this horrible, worst president in the history of our country. So I imitated him a couple of times getting off the stage because he's unable to find a stare. Look, stare. All over you have stairs. When he finishes his 1.5 minute speech, speeches last for about a minute, never takes questions. When he does, he picks up a thing and he goes, let's see here. Jill of NBC. Yes, where's Jill? I'm here. Right in front. Because they put her there. So she'll read it. What flavor ice cream is your favorite? And then he picks up the thing. Vanilla. Think of it, what they do. You saw me in the White House. It was like war. What they do is they give the guy the question and the answer. They never did that with me. He's reading the answers to questions. He's calling a reporter from NBC fake news, CBS fake news, CNN, ABC. They're all pretty much the same. MSNBC is probably the worst, probably the most evil. They're sick. These are sick people. But they're all sort of the same. They're all bad. And they're all very dishonest. So, no, they know what I'm saying. I love that. I love you people. Where the hell are you from? Wow. I got to find out what was the magic word that got that little. But we're not going to let this happen with our country anymore. We're taking back our country. So.
And by the way, why is it an obsession of Democrats to try to convince themselves that Trump doesn't care about his voters? We had record low poverty with Trump, low interest rates, low inflation, record highs in household median income. Democrats say the economy is good, inflation is at 3%. It was much lower than 3% with Trump, but interest rates were less than 3% with Trump. Mortgage rates are over 7%, 6 to 7, more than 7% in many cases. Okay, well, no, mortgage rates are what? For 30-year mortgage is what? Over 7%. You're paying double every month for a new house under Biden, and yet Biden cares about his voters and Trump doesn't? We had a much better economy with Trump. Objectively, if you care about the country and you're not actually part of a cult, see, I would vote for, even though I'm conservative on most things, especially the Second Amendment, if Biden was a good president, if we had record low poverty, if he was the first president to step foot in North Korea to begin détente between North and South Korea, if we had the Abraham Accords, if Biden actually negotiated the Doha Agreement instead of a completely botched withdrawal that was called for a May 1st, 2021 withdrawal, not a haphazard summer withdrawal. Everything Democrats do, completely inept and failed at all. Like everything they tackle, everything they do doesn't work out. Yet they have a base of voters that continue. That's the cult. Okay, and the economy is in terrible shape. That's why they can't lower interest rates. Why do you think interest rates are so high, Democrats? The same people who are, well, inflation's at 3%. Yes, genius, who knows nothing about the economy. The inflation rate is at, 3%? It's actually a lot more for rent and food and energy. But 3% because interest rates, mortgage rates are over 7%. The national interest rate's 5.5%. Why do you think it's that high? Because if they lower it, inflation would skyrocket. But this is basic economics, basic economics. And Democrats and like pundits on the left, they're completely clueless. And they're obsessed with Trump. But let's continue. And then we'll get to the Supreme Court. But they're obsessed with Trump, and you can hear people are laughing. They're having a good time. It's like, Clown World, thank you. Jay Goodman, Professor. Thank you. That would be amusing. Thank you, Clown World. Thank you. To my super chat, thank you. God bless you all for watching, everybody. Thank you. Let's continue, and then we'll get to the Supreme Court. But this is the thing. Trump is fun. He's lively. He's hilarious. And Democrats are used to a person who mumbles and murmurs and stumbles about and is incoherent. And I say this with all due respect. God bless Biden. God bless him. You reach a certain age. It's actually, age is nothing but a number. It doesn't really matter. Trump is 77? He's full of energy. He's full of life. He's hilarious. Biden is older, but there's obvious, overt issues that even the special counsel investigating his breaking of the law regarding classified data. So yes, Democrats are above the law, at the moment. Won't be when Trump becomes president again. But anyway, cognitive issues. You have a stumbling, bumbling, and I say this with all due respect, everyone sees it. I'm not trying to be mean. Commander-in-chief that meanders off into incoherent, mumbled words. And it's like our current commander-in-chief, God bless him, he can be giving a speech and Democrats will suspend logic. They will suspend basic logic. And our current commander-in-chief, God bless him, could be like, in the United States, and you mess with us, man, the cornflakes. And Democrats will say, oh, Trump, he went in his pants. It's like, no, he didn't. And likely the person you voted for did. Everything with Democrats is make everything morally relative because we're so horrible. So distort and lie about everything Trump says. Pretend the entire planet doesn't see a person with major issues upstairs who meanders off into incoherent slurring of speech, and just, hope that everyone just is more incensed and angry about Trump's personality. Nobody cares about Trump's personality anymore. Nobody cares about mean tweets anymore. We've been through a terrible economy, an atrocious foreign policy. We're talking about possible nuclear annihilation, and nobody cares. That's the cult. You're in the Democratic Party, an actual cult, when there's literally talk of a nuclear confrontation, and still nobody cares. Anyway, let's continue.
When we get in, it's going to go very rapidly. We're going to do a lot of things. We're going to look very strongly at J6. Those people, there has never been people treated more horrifically than J6 hostages. Horrible thing. And that blows two ways. That blows two ways, believe me. And we don't want anybody doing something, but what they did to some of those people, to me, I would hate like hell to see if you weren't nice to me. And remember, he would have never, and he didn't, he would have never gone into Ukraine. Have a border that's absolutely powerful and beat us is to cheat. That's the only way they're going to. We're not. What's going on? The whole world is collapsing. He said the only thing that's going to save the world is Donald Trump has to get reelected as president, and the whole world is going to be saved because China.
And this is true, ladies and gentlemen. There are simple, straightforward foreign policy avenues, objectives that Trump has already stated. He wants peace. Democrats are just fine with never-ending military conflict. They have zero definition of victory. Zero definition of victory. What is your definition of victory, Democrats? Well, I don't know. Let's listen to the great John Yoo and the great Mark Levin.
Right. John Yoo, you see this case in Manhattan. How bad is it for our nation? How bad is it for our electoral system? How bad is it for the rule of law, for federalism, the whole kit and caboodle?
Mark, thanks for having me back. I am saddened at what this case has now done to our political and constitutional system. It's hard to exaggerate the harm that it's going to do, not just to Donald Trump. He's important, but the more important question is, what does this do to our institutions? As you said, our legal system, our electoral system, our system of federalism, and the separation of powers for all future presidents, for all future citizens. First, we have never prosecuted a former president before. This was not because past presidents hadn't done anything bad. It's because we thought it was the best thing for our separation of powers to leave presidents alone. And the reason why is because the Constitution concentrates so much responsibility and authority in the president.
When I do my segments and people are like, you do all the segments on the Supreme Court now. Why? This is Supreme Court month. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Supreme Court month. I'm going to be annoying and say it again. It is Supreme Court month. Okay? It's like March Madness, but for the Constitution. So, this is every day a countdown to what I've been telling you. I'm not Nostradamus, but everything that I've been saying has happened. I told you there would be a 9-0 unanimous Supreme Court decision overturning the Colorado ban, the despotic, totalitarian, authoritarian Supreme Court of Colorado ban with Trump. Even the liberal justices overturned a completely unconstitutional ban. I said it would be 9-0. If you watch the channel, you know because I repeat myself 1,000 times. In a minute, I'll repeat myself 1,000 times. And so, 9-0, it happened. And I'm telling you, this is going to be a constitutional victory on presidential immunity. And Justice Clarence Thomas is going to be at the forefront. So will Samuel Alito and every other justice. You might even get a liberal justice as well. You might even get, and then the Democrats will go after the liberal justices. Democrats, here's the thing. I can go on forever. The point is, he's going to get a huge victory there. And Mark Levin is talking about the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court getting involved immediately. And I've been saying that from day one. The second that Trump was convicted of an unconstitutional guilty verdict, where a federal statute that doesn't exist was leveled at Trump, I said that the Supreme Court would get involved. And can you imagine how beautiful and how lovely and how delicious and how amazing it'll be when Democrats, yet again, find out that their unconstitutional behavior is called out by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court offers an historic rebuke of their blatantly unconstitutional decisions against Trump. And then they'll want to pack the courts because they're very intelligent. Democrats are very intelligent. We're going to have 13 justices, and then we're going to have 57 justices, and then we're going to have 113 justices. And then Republicans will then, add 117 justices. We can go on forever. And then because of Democrats, we'll have 3,557 justices. And then the next Republican administration will have 3,000, whatever, and then 50, and then 77 justices. And we'll go on forever. Because Democrats cheated Bernie Sanders like, I'm the only person on the planet still talking about that. And they're complete farce and theatrical performance of a primary. And then they pontificate about democracy. And then they lost to Trump, who, God bless him, ushered in 3 new conservative justices. And then Harry Reid was the one who, it used to be a supermajority of 60 Congress people, and now it's only 50. Wah, 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 because they thought that Hillary would win. Anyway, hit subscribe if you're new. Let's listen to, and you're going to hear John Yoo in a second explain exactly why Justice Thomas and Alito and every conservative, including, I think, even some of the liberal justices, maybe 1 or 2, will overturn the guilty verdict.
To take care that the laws are faithfully executed, to protect the country from foreign threats, that we don't want our presidents, when they're making the hardest decisions on behalf of the country, to be worrying about whether they're going to be prosecuted or not. We don't want our presidents to be insurance claims adjusters worrying about risks and balances of their own personal finances and their own personal legal situation. We want them to decide what's best for the country. Now, because this case was so frivolous, because it was based on such concocted legal theories, it opens the door wide now for any DA, and there are 2,500 of them in the country, any DA to sue and prosecute any president, any past president, perhaps any sitting president under the theories that were put forward earlier. I think.
Thank you, Rhett Lindsay. Alan Dershowitz says he talked to Trump's lawyers. Why don't Trump's lawyers listen to him by following his plan on how to expedite the appeals process to the Supreme Court? Are they incompetent? Thank you, Rhett. I appreciate your support. I do think, Rhett, that they've already, they might not have conveyed or communicated to the world that that they've filed the brief or the writ, whatever it takes to get to the Supreme Court. But I think that it has to happen before July 11th. Definitely before November 5th. I think that the Supreme Court will shock the world. I think they'll do something that is completely logical and rational. They'll accept the case to look at it because Democrats literally made up a federal statute, and John Yoo will talk about that in a second. exactly why the Supreme Court and Clarence Thomas and others will overturn the guilty verdict. But I do think that they've already done that.
I think an even worse problem is for the rule of law. Because what we've all learned now, I think, is that prosecutors can destroy a person. They can destroy a person's reputation, his finances, just by investigating them, even before they get to court, just by publicly announcing that they're investigating someone. We have for 230 years relied on prosecutors, on our elected chief executives, governors, and presidents to show, again, statesmanship, to go show good judgment, not to abuse this power. But now what we've seen is that I think the Biden Justice Department and these blue city DAs are abusing this power, not to try to stop crime, but to target individuals because they don't like them, because they're unpopular, and then to find the crimes to fit the man.
What John Yoo is talking about is the following. Democrats don't have anything to run on. They don't have the economy or foreign policy to run on. They've convinced themselves that Trump is as corrupt and that Trump has committed as many crimes as Bill and Hillary Clinton or Hunter and Joe. So in their minds, all they hear about is how Trump is the epitome of evil and he's a horrible human being. And they don't realize that the opposite is true, that Democrats for years and years have been getting away with obvious, overt bribery and graft schemes, okay? You can look at Tammany Hall. That's how the modern Democratic Party was founded, upon bribery and graft. You can look at political machines in New York or Chicago or other blue cities. That's just the way that it was called honest graft by the Plunkett. Oh, I forgot. He was a Democratic politician in the late 1800s, early 1900s, who wrote a book on honest graft. Okay, Democrats utilize their position in office, in politics, in government to enrich themselves. That's how they make money. It's very lucrative. Okay, and they do so, and then liberal journalists and wonderful, morally superior investigative journalists who never investigate Biden or Hunter or Bill or Hillary or whatever. You will never find an investigative journalist at the Washington Post or New York Times that investigates Democrats. They will only get Pulitzer Prizes for investigating Trump. And the Democrats will get away with like infinitely worse. But they don't have anything to run on. And they actually commit crimes. So what better way in terms of politics, if you have all of media serving as a cheerleader and a mouthpiece and an echo chamber, why not just, what they did to Trump is they would do to Nikki Haley and to DeSantis. That's why I can't stand the people like, oh, well, I don't know if I like Trump. It's like, well, who do you like? I love Nikki Haley. Well, what do you like about Nikki Haley? Well, she's better, she's better with the media. The media would devour DeSantis and Nikki Haley, and they would also be indicted tomorrow. It doesn't even matter. Oh, Trump brings it upon himself. No, he doesn't. This was like the FEC and the federal government, the Department of Justice dropped the case. They still indicted him under a federal statute that doesn't exist. There's no federal statute, the state of New York, leveled against Trump. So, and you're going to hear that from John Yoo in a second.
That is directly a direct assault on the rule of law. And that harms all of us in the country, all the citizens, not just Trump.
Nelson, thank you. Nelson Reyes, thank you for your content. I appreciate it, Nelson. Thank you so much. Thank you for watching.
Not just presidents, but you and me and everyone else.
And what about the electoral system when you have one of these DAs deciding that they get to decide or try to decide the outcome of an election through the process?
Now, this is very important, and I have like one comment out of like 120 the past couple, one last segment. Why are you doing a segment on the Supreme Court all the time? And it's like, well, that's because it's Supreme Court month. And Trump is going to get a huge, huge victory overturning the absurd, unconstitutional guilty verdict. Listen to John Yoo.
They can make a ambiguous reference to federal law, seize jurisdiction from what is a complex layer of federal authorities and decision makers when it comes to federal election campaign law, let alone seize the authority from federal courts and the Supreme Court to make these decisions, regardless of what the New York courts say up and down the chain. I mean, whatever the New York courts say up and down the chain, that is not the final decision. If the federal Supreme Court decides to step in, that's the final decision for you, New York. So if I'm in California and I see that it worked in New York, because we have this lumbering appellate process, but I can interfere with an election. By the time the appellate process catches up with me, so be it. They're going to time it the same way. So this can really become a cancer on the political campaign system of the highest federal official in the United States, and the election there too. No,
Mark, I appreciate what you said in your opening statement, because the Supreme Court has made clear, not just in one offside comment, in 3 very clear decisions, that only the federal government can enforce federal law. Only the Justice Department and the Federal Election Commission.
That's why I do a segment twice a day, and I'll do it 3-4 times a day soon, because this is going to be huge victories for Trump on the Supreme Court, ensuring that the rule of law and the Constitution are upheld. That's why I do these segments. Exactly why what John, you just said right here. This is it, ladies and gentlemen. And you'll get this every day, but this is it. This is very important. And this is why this is like March Madness for the Constitution and rule of law this month. Trump is going to get the Supreme Court to save democracy and protect him from Democrats this month.
Has made clear, not just in one offside comment, in 3 very clear decisions, that only the federal government can enforce federal law. Only the Justice Department and the Federal Election Commission can prosecute and bring suit for violations of federal election law. They're the guardians of how federal election should run. And so what happened here is that the DA, approved by this judge, Judge Merchan, grabbed the authority away and basically decided to prosecute his own interpretation of federal law. That's not permissible under our separation of powers and federalism, and the Supreme Court will reverse if, as you say, Mark, they get a chance to hear this case.
When we come back, John.
You heard it from John Yoo. The Supreme Court will reverse. I'm not a legal scholar, quote unquote. I just do my research. I'm an intelligent individual. I'm an American citizen. And so, I understand basic logic, and I understand how the country runs. And I remember U.S. history when I was growing up. And this is basic civics. A state cannot level a federal charge at anyone without the federal government. It's highly unconstitutional. And John, you just said it right here.
And basically decided to prosecute his own interpretation of federal law. That's not permissible under our separation of powers and federalism, and the Supreme Court will reverse if, as you say, Mark, they get a chance to hear this case.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, it's only a matter of time before Justice Thomas overturns an unconstitutional guilty verdict. Okay, and what makes it unconstitutional is right here. You heard John Yoo talk about it, but this is the former FEC chairman, Hans A. von Spakovsky. Bradley Smith. You'll hear Hans A. von Spakovsky in a second. There was no federal crime. That's why the Federal Election Commission dropped it, and that's why the FEC actually fined Clinton and the DNC, utilizing statutes that Democrats haven't even cited in their federal conviction of Trump, which is hilarious.
They indicted. Well, we know why they're not indicted, right? Because we don't want to indict them. But no, it's a good example of things that influence the campaign. And it's worth noting that under the FEC's regulations, if you're an incumbent office holder, you're presumed to be running for re-election. So you're all presumed to be candidates unless they've announced that they're not seeking re-election. So they would be candidates, and this is something that they probably did to influence their future campaign or their perception as office holders. And one thing that's worth adding here, Mark, is because I hear this from people all the time, and even some other, election people who know election law, lawyers and some former other commissioners will say, yes, but it was to influence an election. But the FEC in its regulations very specifically rejected the idea that even as to whether it was primarily to influence the election or not, and choosing instead this test that it has to be an obligation that was created for the election. In other words, they didn't want to get into the question of trying to guess, well, did they do this primarily for the election or primarily for personal purposes? And it's very specific about that in the regulations. And I think that's a very important point that people need to keep in mind. And that was done actually to make it more objective and actually to prevent candidates from using their campaign funds for personal use. But, that's the flip side. And I tell people, imagine if you're a lawyer for the Trump campaign and you want to do it all right. You've got one provision of the statute says I have to pay it with campaign funds. Another provision seems to say I can't pay it with campaign funds. Somebody's going to get them coming or going, and that's part of the problem. So if you're a lawyer for the Trump campaign or the coming Trump campaign.
So it was not a crime. It was not a crime. We'll hear from Hanze von Spakovsky now, another FEC chairman. You heard from Bradley Smith. Now Hanze von Spakovsky.
Of the Federal Election Commission, Hans von Spakovsky, agrees with the president, and he joins us now. Hans, thanks so much for being here.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Set this up for our viewers. What is this campaign finance law, and why do you say Donald Trump did not violate it?
It's called the Federal Election Campaign Act, and it governs the raising of money and the spending of money for all federal campaigns. That's anyone running for Congress or the presidency. Mr. Cohen pleaded guilty to a supposed violation of that law because of payments that were made, I guess you could call them hush money payments, to two women who were claiming that they had had affairs with the president. The problem with his guilty plea is that those payments aren't covered by the law. The only way these kind of expenses are covered under the law is if they are campaign. These are not campaign-related expenses. This is a potential personal liability of the president, and you actually can't use campaign funds, money that you've raised from campaign contributors, to pay for something like that.
Well, you had mentioned and quoted Federal Election Commission Chairman Brad Smith, who said that these payments to women were unseemly, right, but they're not necessarily illegal.
Yeah, and that's the key thing for people to keep in mind here. We're talking about what is an actual violation of federal law. And this is not something that the Federal Election Commission, and that's the independent agency that is supposed to enforce this law on a civil basis, and that's where I used to serve as a commissioner. It does not consider that these kind of payments are related to a campaign. Therefore, the rules and regulations don't apply to how that kind of a payment is made.
Do any of Michael Cohen's or the president's actions, Hans, constitute a civil offense?
No, I don't think they do, and they certainly don't constitute a criminal offense. Why? Well, because under the law, to prove a criminal violation of the campaign finance law, you have to prove that it was a knowing and willful violation. You can't prove that when you have former FEC commissioners saying it's not a violation of the law. You have the FEC saying it's not a violation of the law. That raises great doubts about it, and so how can anyone be found to have willfully and knowingly violated the law?
That is an amazing point. You have Bradley Smith and Hans A. von Spakovsky, two former Federal Election Commission chairmen, literally saying it is no crime. Trump did not commit a crime. Michael Cohen did not commit an FEC crime. Yet, the court in New York took it upon itself to decipher federal law. They're not the FEC. The FEC dropped the case. The DOJ dropped the case. You have former Federal Election Commission chairman stating it is not against the law, and still Trump is convicted. That's because it's unconstitutional. They'll do anything possible to try to harm Trump. God bless Donald Trump. It's unbelievable. The vitriol and venom, the hyperventilating that and just the maniacal obsession and quest Democrats have to ruin this man, and he only gets stronger. While Democrats get weaker in the polls and the economy and foreign policy is an unmitigated disaster. But anyway, hit subscribe to this channel, people. I'll be back tomorrow. God bless you all. I should have about 4 p.m., 5 p.m. Eastern live stream. Thanks, everybody.